Caroline watched her 7-year-old daughter grip that small gift box with trembling fingers. The crowded Christmas table fell silent as little Zia stepped forward, her sparkly gold dress catching the firelight. Every fork froze midair. The music faded to nothing. "Grandma," Zia's voice cut through the tension like glass, "Dad told me to give this to you if you ever ignored me again." Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Caroline, and wherever you're watching from tonight, whether you're curled up in bed, taking a break at work, or maybe dealing with your own family drama, I see you, and I'm so grateful you're here. How are you doing? Really, how are you holding up? And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that button now. You're about to witness something that will change how you think about family forever. What you're about to hear isn't just another story about difficult in-laws. This is about the moment my daughter decided she was done being invisible. The moment she took her power back with a single, devastating gift that shattered years of fake smiles and forced politeness. But how did we get here? How does a 7-year-old end up delivering such perfect, bone-chilling justice? The answer lies in 3 years of silent warfare, broken promises, and one husband who finally chose his daughter over his mother's feelings. Caroline had always believed family meant unconditional love. Growing up in a small house with parents who worked double shifts, she learned early that love wasn't measured in expensive gifts or perfect holiday spreads. Love was showing up. Love was making room. Love was seeing someone and choosing them again and again. When she married Travis, she thought she was gaining not just a husband, but a sprawling, boisterous family. His mother, Lorraine, commanded every room she entered, a silver-haired force of nature who organized elaborate gatherings and held court at the head of perfectly set tables. Caroline admired her, even envied her confidence. "You'll fit right in," Travis had promised during their engagement, squeezing her hand as they pulled into Lorraine's driveway for the first time. But Caroline came with Zia, her daughter from a previous marriage, a bright-eyed 2-year-old who called Travis daddy within months of meeting him. Travis never hesitated, never treated Zia as anything less than his own flesh and blood. When they married, the adoption papers were signed before the honeymoon ended. "She's not a stepdaughter," Travis would correct anyone who used that term. "She's my daughter. Period." Lorraine smiled at the wedding. She cooed over baby pictures. She sent birthday cards with generic messages. But Caroline noticed the subtle shifts, the way Lorraine's voice changed when she spoke about Zia, the careful distance she maintained, the way she'd refer to Travis's biological children in conversations about the future. Still, Caroline convinced herself she was overthinking it. Blended families took time. Love would grow. It had to. The first crack in Caroline's optimism came at Zia's 4th birthday party. She had spent weeks planning, homemade decorations, Zia's favorite rainbow cake, party games that would make her little girl feel like a princess. The whole family was invited. Lorraine arrived with elaborate gifts for her other grandchildren who weren't even celebrating birthdays. Maddie, Travis's niece, received a designer dress just because she looked so pretty today. Jonah got a remote control car to keep him busy. For Zia, the birthday girl, Lorraine produced a small gift bag containing a single coloring book and a pack of crayons, clearly grabbed from a gas station checkout line. "I didn't want her to feel left out," Lorraine said with that practiced smile, the one Caroline was beginning to recognize as her mother-in-law's signature move. That night, as Caroline helped Zia into her pajamas, her daughter asked the question that would haunt her for years, "Mama, why doesn't Grandma like me very much?" Caroline's heart shattered. "Oh sweetheart, Grandma loves you. She just shows it differently. It's okay, Mama. Some people don't know how to love kids like me." 4 years old. 4 years old and already learning to accept less, to make excuses for adults who should know better. That night, Caroline confronted Travis. "We need to talk to your mother." "She's still adjusting," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Give her time." "How much time does our daughter have to feel unwanted in her own family?" Travis looked away. "I'll handle it." But he didn't. And the pattern continued. Over the next 2 years, Caroline documented every slight, every overlooked moment, every casual cruelty disguised as forgetfulness. She told herself she was gathering evidence, but really, she was building a case for her own sanity. Christmas photos where Zia was positioned at the edge, barely in frame. Family cookouts where matching t-shirts were distributed to every child except hers. Birthday parties where Zia received token gifts while other children were lavished with attention and expensive presents. The worst was Thanksgiving of Zia's 6th year. Lorraine had commissioned personalized plates for each grandchild, fine china with their names painted in gold script. Every child sat down to find their name gleaming at their place setting. Zia's seat held a paper plate. "Oh, I must have miscounted," Lorraine said with that terrible smile. "Zia won't mind, will you, sweetheart? You're not picky about those things." Caroline watched her daughter nod politely, folding her hands in her lap like she'd been trained not to ask for more. That night, Zia whispered in the darkness of her bedroom, "Maybe she thinks I'm just visiting." Travis heard it too. Caroline saw his jaw clench, saw something break behind his eyes. But still, he said nothing. The arguments between Caroline and Travis grew sharper, more desperate. She begged him to see what was happening. He acknowledged it but claimed powerlessness. "She's my mother," he'd say, as if that explained everything. "And Zia is your daughter," Caroline would reply. "When are you going to choose her?" The question hung between them like a challenge neither was ready to face. Everything changed on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Caroline was picking up Zia from school when her daughter climbed into the car with tears streaming down her face. "What happened, baby?" "We had to draw our family tree today. I drew you and Daddy and me, and Mrs. Patterson said I should add my grandparents. So I drew Grandma Lorraine and Grandpa William." Caroline's chest tightened. "That sounds lovely." But then Emma saw it and said her grandma told her that Grandma Lorraine doesn't really count me because I'm not really Travis's daughter. She said her mom heard Grandma Lorraine say it at book club. The world tilted. Caroline pulled over to the side of the road, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. Her 6-year-old daughter had just learned that her grandmother was publicly dismissing her existence. That evening, Caroline confronted Travis with a fury she'd never felt before. "She's telling people at book club that Zia isn't your real daughter. Other parents, Travis. Other children are hearing this." For the first time, Travis didn't make excuses. His face went pale, then red, then deadly calm. "She said that? Your daughter came home from school crying because another child told her she doesn't count." Something shifted in Travis that night. Caroline watched him disappear into his office and stay there for hours. She heard him on the phone, first with his sister, then with his father, having heated conversations in hushed tones. The next morning, he showed Zia a small red box wrapped with white ribbon. "What's this, Daddy?" "It's something very important," he said, kneeling to her level. "If Grandma ever makes you feel like you don't belong again, if she ever treats you like you're not my real daughter, I want you to give her this box. But only when you're ready. Only when you decide it's time." Zia held the box carefully, like it contained magic. "What's inside?" "The truth," Travis said simply. "And sometimes the truth is the most powerful thing we can give someone." Caroline expected confrontation after that revelation. She expected Travis to call his mother, to demand change, to draw clear boundaries. Instead, weeks passed in tense silence. Lorraine continued her patterns of subtle exclusion, seemingly unaware that anything had shifted. The Christmas gathering arrived with its usual pomp, the perfectly decorated house, the expensive gifts, the performance of family unity. Caroline dressed Zia in her favorite sparkly gold dress and tried to prepare herself for another holiday of watching her daughter be diminished. But this time felt different. Zia carried herself with a quiet confidence Caroline had never seen before. She clutched her homemade gift for Lorraine, a painted wooden jewelry box decorated with glitter and rhinestones, Grandma spelled out in crooked letters across the top. The gift exchange unfolded exactly as Caroline had feared. Maddie received a brand new iPad, squealing with delight as she hugged Lorraine. Jonah opened an envelope stuffed with cash, enough to make the adults whistle in appreciation. Then came Zia's turn. Lorraine held up a small gift bag with visible reluctance. "This is for you, sweetheart. I didn't want you to feel completely left out." Inside was a lavender-scented candle in a plain glass jar. The tag read, "To Travis's girl," not even her name. The room continued its celebration around them, but Caroline felt like she was underwater, watching her daughter shrink into herself once again. She looked at Travis, willing him to speak, to act, to be the father Zia deserved. He was staring at the floor, his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles had gone white. That's when Caroline realized he wasn't going to save them. He was waiting for Zia to save herself. And in that moment of absolute clarity, she understood why he had given her the box. In the car afterward, Zia sat quietly in the back seat, the candle balanced on her lap next to the small red box Travis had given her weeks earlier. "Grandma called me Travis's girl," she said finally, her voice small but steady. Caroline turned around, her heart breaking. "I know, sweetheart. But I'm not just Travis's girl. I'm his daughter. The papers say so." Travis met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Yes, you are. You've always been my daughter." Zia nodded once, with the solemnity of someone much older. "Then I think it's time to give her the box." The next morning, Lorraine called to invite them to brunch, a tradition she'd started to extend the Christmas celebration. Usually, Caroline would have found an excuse to decline. The thought of subjecting Zia to another round of calculated neglect felt unbearable. But Zia wanted to go. "I need to give her the box, Mama. She needs to know who I really am." Caroline looked at her 6-year-old daughter, this fierce little person who had decided she was done accepting crumbs, and felt a surge of pride so powerful it took her breath away. "Okay, baby. We'll go." Travis was quiet during the drive, but Caroline saw him glance at Zia in the rearview mirror every few seconds. She was holding the box with both hands, her expression calm and determined. "Are you nervous?" Caroline asked. "No," Zia said simply. "I'm ready." Lorraine's house was a museum of Christmas perfection, every surface gleaming, every decoration precisely placed. The brunch table was set with fine china and crystal glasses, as if the casual meal required royal treatment. The conversation flowed around typical topics: work, weather, plans for New Year's. Zia ate quietly, occasionally touching the red box she'd placed beside her plate. Caroline watched her daughter like a hawk, marveling at her composure. After the meal, as adults lingered over coffee and dessert, Zia stood up. The movement was so deliberate that conversation gradually died around the table. She picked up the box and walked to where Lorraine sat at the head of the table, surrounded by empty plates and the detritus of another perfect performance. "Grandma," Zia said, her child's voice cutting through the sudden silence like a bell, "Dad told me to give this to you if you ever ignored me again." Lorraine's smile faltered. "What's this, sweetheart?" Instead of answering, Zia placed the box in front of her grandmother and stepped back. The room held its breath. Lorraine laughed nervously, looking around the table for support. "Well, this is mysterious. What could be so important?" She opened the box like she was performing for an audience, her expression shifting from amusement to confusion to something approaching horror as she lifted out the contents. First, a framed photograph of Travis holding 2-year-old Zia in a hospital chair, both of them grinning at the camera. The caption read, "Day 1 Dad" in gold lettering. Beneath it, official adoption papers with court seals and signatures, Travis's name clearly printed under Father. At the bottom of the box, a letter in Travis's handwriting. Lorraine's face went white as she read silently, her lips moving slightly with each devastating word. "Mom, if you're reading this, it means you have hurt my daughter again. Not just mine by love, but mine by law, by promise, and by choice. I have spent years watching you treat Zia like an outsider. I hoped it would change. I hoped you would open your heart the way I did. But if she ever had to hand you this box, it means she saw what I saw, that you don't consider her real. Zia is my child. She is your granddaughter. And if you cannot love her equally, then you don't love me. I will not allow her to grow up thinking she has to earn a place in this family. She already belongs. She always has. If you cannot accept that, you will no longer be welcome in our home or in our lives. Travis. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Caroline watched emotions war across Lorraine's face: shame, anger, disbelief, desperation. When she finally looked up, her eyes were wild. I can't believe, how dare you embarrass me like this? Travis stood up slowly. We didn't embarrass you, Mom. You did that all by yourself. Lorraine pointed an accusing finger at Caroline. This is her doing. She turned you against your own mother. Caroline rose too, her voice steady and clear. No, Lorraine. Zia gave you a gift. She gave you the chance to see her. You chose not to. For a moment that felt like eternity, grandmother and granddaughter looked at each other across the wreckage of years of pretense. Zia didn't flinch, didn't apologize, didn't try to make it easier. She simply waited for her truth to be acknowledged. Lorraine screamed then, a sound of pure anguish that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than anger. It was the sound of a woman watching her carefully constructed world crumble around her. Travis took Zia's hand. Ready to go home? She nodded, and together, they walked out of that perfect house with its perfect decorations and imperfect love, leaving Lorraine to sit with the consequences of her choices. In the weeks that followed, Caroline waited for the phone calls, the tearful apologies, the desperate attempts at reconciliation. They never came. Instead, there was peace. Zia stopped asking why she was different from the other grandchildren. She stopped measuring her worth against elaborate gifts or matching outfits. She had claimed her place in their family, and that place was unshakable. One afternoon, a package arrived addressed to Zia. Inside was a silver bracelet with a heart charm and a note from Maddie. I'm sorry Grandma was mean. You're my cousin forever. I picked this with my allowance. Zia wore that bracelet every day, not because it was expensive, but because it represented something priceless: being chosen, being seen, being loved without conditions. Travis changed too. The weight he'd carried for years, the impossible balance between his mother's expectations and his daughter's needs, was gone. He had made his choice, and it had set him free. Do you regret it? Caroline asked him one evening as they watched Zia play in the backyard, the bracelet from Maddie catching the sunlight. Never, he said without hesitation. I should have done it sooner. Caroline kept the red box in a drawer beside Zia's baby photos and hospital bracelets. Not because she wanted to remember the pain, but because she wanted to remember the power, the moment her 6-year-old daughter taught an entire family what courage looked like. Sometimes people ask Caroline if she feels bad about what happened, if she wishes things could have been different. The answer is simple: she wishes Lorraine had chosen love. But she will never regret teaching her daughter that she deserves to be chosen too. Family isn't about blood or obligation or keeping peace at any cost. Family is about showing up, making room, and fighting for each other when it matters most. And on that Christmas morning, watching her daughter stand tall in her sparkly gold dress and claim her rightful place in the world, Caroline learned that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most powerful truths. The box sits in that drawer still, a reminder that love isn't about perfect holidays or expensive gifts. Love is about seeing someone completely and choosing them anyway. It's about teaching your children that they never have to earn their worth, because they were born worthy of love. And sometimes, when the world tries to make them invisible, love looks like a little girl in a gold dress, holding a box full of truth, and refusing to disappear. If this story moved you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your stories matter too. Tell me in the comments about a time you or someone you love had to stand up for what was right. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about real moments that change everything. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to accept less than you deserve.